The galaxy was wide and endless, with stars shining across the black sea of space and thousands of civilizations moving in silence and order, as if the stars themselves had created a council of endless beings. And for many years no new sound had dared to shake the peace that covered the void like a heavy blanket. But then a strange signal began to move through the dark, and it was unlike any other sound the council had heard before, for it was not a warning beacon, not a coded command, not even a familiar alien tongue. It was something deeper and heavier. The members of the Galactic Council gathered in their massive hall, a hall built of crystal towers and silver beams that shone under the light of 1,000 suns. Yet even this place of power and knowledge trembled with unease as a strange signal was played aloud, the chamber filled with a single human voice, clear, strong, steady, and calm. And even though the words were not violent, the weight and the tone felt like fire running through the hearts of every alien leader. The voice spoke of simple things. It carried the sound of courage, the sound of a being that had walked through endless storms yet refused to fall, and the council could not understand why such a normal voice caused such fear. The sound was not a weapon, yet every heart felt as if struck by one, for no species in the galaxy had ever spoken with such calm power. The tone was steady, the rhythm was unbroken, and the message was plain, but wrapped in something no alien could explain. As the voice continued across the stars, the story of humans began to unfold in tiny fragments. The voice carried the echo of struggle, the sound of a people who had faced cold winters, who had faced burning suns, who had walked through war and fire, yet always rose again. And though no alien translator could catch every word, the feeling behind the words was sharper than any blade and deeper than any void. Rumors spread faster than the signal itself. Traders whispered in hidden stations, soldiers spoke in fear across barracks, and even children of far planets woke at night trembling from dreams of a voice they had never heard before, for the sound did not just travel by machine, it seemed to travel inside the mind. It seemed to touch every soul with a force unknown, and the council feared that this was not a simple accident. This was a warning from a race no one had ever truly met. For centuries, the galaxy had known peace, or at least a form of peace controlled by the larger powers who ruled through fleets and armies. Yet the humans were different. They were not part of the council, not part of any known empire. They were only a whisper in records of forgotten people living on a small blue world near the edge of a quiet arm of the galaxy. But if the signal was real, then the humans were no longer silent. They were longer forgotten. They had chosen to speak, and the entire galaxy listened. The first session of the council ended in chaos. Voices rose from every corner. Some cried that the humans must be destroyed before they grew stronger. Some argued that no one had the right to silence a race that dared to speak. And others whispered that the voice was not a natural sound, but a weapon, something created to break the will of other species. Yet, no matter what was said, every leader carried the same weight. In their hearts, the humans had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the second day began, the voice repeated, but this time it grew louder. The words flowed with even more strength, as if the humans knew the galaxy was listening, and they wanted every ear to hear them. The voice spoke a work of struggle, of power, unity. It spoke of a people who built without rest, who fought without fear, who dreamed without end. And though the words were simple, the power within them made the floor of the council hall tremble, as if the stars themselves shivered under sound. Some leaders tried to cover their ears, others demanded the sound be silenced, but the voice would not stop. It echoed across stations, across fleets, across colonies. A signal refused to die. No matter what machines tried to block it, no matter what shields were raised, it slipped through every barrier and entered every ear. It was as if the humans had sent not just sound, but their very soul into the stars, and the stars themselves obeyed. In distant fleet, soldiers shivered, their weapons shaking in their hands. As the voice played to the comms, they did not understand why a simple sound made them afraid, for they had faced enemies with claws sharper than steel, with ships larger than planets. Yet nothing had ever made them doubt like this voice made them doubt. Commanders tried to calm them, but even they felt the unease in their bones. The question grew heavier with each passing second. What kind of species had created such a sound? In secret corners, scholars studied the wave of the signal. They measured it, they cut it apart, they tried to remove meaning from it. Yet the deeper they studied, the more confused they became, for it was only sound, yet it carried force, only tone, yet it carried fire. It was impossible, and it was terrifying. One scholar whispered that the humans had unlocked something ancient, something hidden in the stars, something no other race had ever touched, the power of voice itself. The Galactic Council knew they could not hide this truth. Every race in the galaxy had already heard the voice. Every race had already felt the fear. But they also knew something worse. The voice was not fading. The voice was growing stronger, as if the humans were not speaking from one place, but from many places, as if their signal was carried not by machines but by will itself. And then the chamber trembled again. For the third time the voice came. But now it was different. It was no longer just calm, it was no longer just steady. It carried a command, a warning. And though no alien translator could capture it fully, they all understood the meaning: do not come closer. And yet the words did not end with silence. They ended with a promise: we are here, we are awake, and we will not fall. The council sat in silence. No one moved, no one breathed. The chamber that had seen 1,000 years of power now felt like a small, fragile shell under the weight of a single human voice. The fear had become real. The galaxy had changed forever, and a question burned in every heart: what would happen next? The voice of humanity did not fade away. It grew like a storm rolling across the endless sea of stars, and everywhere it reached it left a trail of fear and wonder, for no one had ever felt a sound like this before. No one had ever been shaken by words that carried no weapon, no fleet, no army, only tone. And yet the galaxy trembled as if struck by thunder. In the great city of Ilion, where crystal towers touched the skies, the people gathered in silence around giant screens. As the voice was played once more, the sound was calm and deep, and even though it carried no threat, every listener felt their hearts race. The message was not like the endless speeches of council leaders, not like the hollow songs of empires. It was different. It was raw, it was alive, it was human. Traders who flew between systems began to tell stories in hushed tones. They said the humans had unlocked a secret language, one that cut deeper than blades and burned stronger than suns. Some said the humans were not normal flesh and blood, but something more ancient, perhaps even children of the stars themselves, while others whispered that the humans had found a weapon no one could defend against the weapon of a single voice. The Galactic Council tried control to spread. They ordered transmissions to be blocked. They demanded silence across the networks. Yet no matter how many walls they raised, the signal broke through. It was like a river pouring through cracks in stone. And the harder they tried to stop it, the stronger it became. Soon, even children in distant colonies were speaking about the voice. They asked their parents who the humans were, and why their words made even the bravest soldiers tremble. In the hidden chambers of the military leaders, fear became anger. They could not understand why their fleets, built with endless metal and firepower, felt so small in front of sound that carried no ship at all. Commanders argued across the table, their voices sharp and heavy. Some demanded an invasion of the human world to destroy the source before it grew too strong. Others warned that such a move would be dangerous, for if a single voice could reach the heart of the galaxy, then what else could the humans do? On the coal mining stations near the outer rim, workers played the signal again and again. Though they could not understand the words, the feeling was clear. It was a call, it was a challenge. It was a promise of strength. The miners whispered that maybe the humans were like them, beings who lived hard lives under crushing weight, yet never broke and never bent. Perhaps that was why their voice carried such power, because it was born not in palaces but in struggle. The scholars who studied the voice grew restless. Every test, every machine, every analysis gave the same answer. Sound was only sound, yet it touched the mind like nothing else. It could not be explained by science. It could not be cut apart by tools. It was as if the humans had found the secret root of all languages, the single rhythm that tied thought to spirit. One scholar finally declared that the voice was not just sound, it was proof of will, and that will was unbreakable. In the deep halls of the council chamber, the leaders gathered once again, their faces pale, their eyes heavy from nights. Without rest, a voice had become their shadow, haunting them even in dreams. The council master raised his hand for silence and spoke of the danger they faced. He said the humans were not yet here. They had not yet stepped into the council's world, yet already their presence was shaking the order of the galaxy. If this was what a voice could do, then what would happen if their fleets arrived? Whispers filled the chamber. Some said the humans must be invited to join the council before their power grew beyond control. Others argued that inviting them would only give them more strength and more influence. A small faction even dared to say that the humans must be feared and obeyed, for if their words alone could crush the will of empires, then their armies would be unstoppable. But no decision was reached. The council was divided, and fear grew stronger with each moment. Meanwhile, in a quiet sector on the edge of the galaxy, a group of explorers reported something strange. They had found ruins on forgotten world ruins that carried symbols eerily similar to human writing, though no records showed that humans had ever traveled there before. The explorers whispered among themselves, wondering if the humans had been walking among the stars long before the council had even formed. Maybe the humans were not a new race. Maybe they were old as the stars themselves. The rumor spread fast across secret channels, and soon the fear of humanity was no longer just about their voice. It was about what they might truly be. Some said they were survivors of ancient wars long buried. Some said they were the lost architects of forgotten empires. And others whispered that the humans had returned now, because the galaxy had grown soft and weak, and it was time for fire to rise again, whatever the truth was the voice gave. Wait to all of these stories, and no one could escape its grip. In distant fleets, commanders tested their soldiers by playing the human voice across their ships. They watched as strong warriors shook with unease, and some even dropped their weapons in fear the commanders cursed their weakness. But in their hearts, they too felt the dread, they too felt the shadow of humanity. Rising like a storm across their minds, the fleets were powerful, but power meant nothing if fear hollowed the heart from within. On a lonely moon, two children sat staring at the stars their parents had played the signal earlier, and now they whispered to each other. The little girl asked if the humans were monsters, but the boy shook his head and said, "No monsters growl. No monster scream. This voice is not a monster. This voice is something else, something bigger." And even though they were only children, their words echoed the truth that many across the galaxy were beginning to see. The humans were not monsters, they were something far more terrifying. They were unbroken. As the second week began, the voice came again, louder, clearer, stronger. It carried not only courage, but now a sense of warning. The humans spoke of boundaries, of lines not to be crossed. And though the words were wrapped in calm tone, the meaning was sharp, and absolute did not test as the galaxy trembled once again, and even the stars seemed to dim for a moment, as if they too were listening. The council sat frozen, once more the hall heavy with silence. Every leader asked the same question in their hearts: what would happen if they ignored the warning? What would happen if they challenged the humans? And none of them could answer, for none of them had ever faced an enemy like this before, an enemy who fought with a voice sharper than steel. At the end of that long night, the council could not sleep, their minds trapped in fear and doubt, and far across the galaxy, on the small blue planet, the humans continued to speak, their voice climbing higher and higher, carrying across the stars a fire that could not be stopped, a fire that promised something the galaxy had never known before. And so the stage was set, the fear was growing, the questions were multiplying, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next word, the next echo, the next spark from humanity. The galaxy had not known rest since the human voice first reached across the stars. The nights were filled with whispers, and the days with unease, and the councils of power that once stood firm like iron now trembled like glass before a storm. The voice had become a mystery that no weapon could shatter and no law could silence, and each new day only deepened the fear that spread like fire. In the dark corridors of the High Council, one hidden message passed from hand to hand, a secret report stolen from the edge of human space. It spoke of factories that never slept, machines that worked without pause, and rivers of fire that melted stone into steel. It told production lines so vast that mountains were stripped bare in days, and cities of metal rose in their place. And it warned that this endless production was not only for growth, it was for preparation for something greater, something terrifying. The report reached the ears of the warlords who sat cloaked in shadows, their faces hidden by fear, yet sharpened by greed. They argued that humans were building more than homes and ships. They were building an empire that would rise faster than any before, and once it rose, it would sweep the stars with the same unstoppable force, as their voice for power built in silence was more dangerous than power displayed in light. Meanwhile, in the border colonies, the common people began to speak of the humans as legends. The traders who returned from their space told stories that filled the nights with awe. They said the humans worked together, as if each man and woman carried the weight of the world for the sake of the other. They said no machine was ever left broken, no task left unfinished, no dream left abandoned, and that their strength was not in one hero but in the hands of millions who never stopped building, never stopped moving, never stopped creating. The galaxy had seen warriors, it had seen rulers, it had seen empires, but never had it seen a race that could turn raw stone into fleets of steel faster than stars could burn. And this truth spread fear deeper than any weapon, for if the humans could build without end, then no defeat would break them, for every loss would be replaced by tenfold more, every fall answered by endless rise, and that meant true terror. In secret chambers, the scholars once more studied the recordings of the human voice, and with each new playback, they noticed something strange behind the sound, behind the tone, behind the power. There was a rhythm, a pulse like the steady beat of a machine. And one scholar whispered that it was the echo of their industry, that even their voice carried a mark of endless production, the rhythm of labor and creation flowing like blood through their words. And this discovery shook the scholars, for it meant that the humans were not just speaking, they were building even as they spoke. Across the fleets, the admirals trained their soldiers harder, pushing them beyond limits. Yet nothing silenced the dread that grew with every retelling of human power. They played the recordings again and again, hoping to harden their hearts. But instead, the fear rooted deeper, for every soldier knew that courage built by command could break. But courage born from within could never be broken. and the humans seemed to have that courage in endless supply. On the far edges of known space, a small group of spies risked everything to enter human territory. What they found left them speechless. They saw worlds covered in factories glowing like suns in the dark. They saw rivers of machines flowing like armies across the land. They saw skies filled with ships rising one after another, as if the air itself was giving birth to fleets. And they heard the hum of work that never stopped, never slowed, never slept, and they fled with trembling hearts, carrying the truth back to their masters. Humanity was not just a voice. Humanity was an engine that could not be stopped. The news spread, and with it despair for every leader who dreamed of challenging humanity now knew that their fleets might win one battle, or even 10. But they would lose the war, for humanity could replace losses faster than stars could blink, and this reality made the galaxy realize the truth. The voice was only the first weapon, the second was production itself. In hidden chambers, some leaders whispered that humanity must be destroyed now before their strength grew too great. But others shook their heads in terror. For even if the humans were destroyed, what if they rose again from the ashes? For a people who built endlessly could never truly die. They would rise again, and the cycle would never end. This thought froze the council in silence. And while the galaxy argued and feared, humanity continued to build the people of Earth, and its colonies worked with unity unknown to most other races. They built for survival. They built for progress. They built because creation was in their very blood, and this gave them a strength no council could measure and no empire could challenge. In the quiet night of one council world, a leader stared into the stars, his hands trembling. He whispered to himself that the humans were not dangerous because of their fleets or their armies. They were dangerous because they could rise from nothing and become everything. They were dangerous because even when silence filled the void, their voice still echoed in the hearts of all who heard it. As the third week of fear began, the humans sent a new signal. It was not a threat, it was not a command, it was a simple statement. Yet it carried the same storm of power. As before, it said that humanity would continue to build, and that no one could stop them. And though the words were calm, they cut like fire into the minds of those who listened. The galaxy now understood that the humans had no need for threats, no need for war. Their promise alone was enough to terrify empires. And so the galaxy stood on the edge of a storm, its rulers restless, its fleets uneasy, its people whispering of legends, and in the silence between stars, one truth grew louder than all others. Humanity was rising, and nothing could halt their endless march. The council met once again, their voices breaking, their words clashing like storms, yet behind every argument lay the same fear. What would come next? What would the humans reveal in their next voice? And though no one dared to say aloud, all of them knew the truth. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear of weapons. It was ruled by fear of people who could build without end. And as the night fell across the stars, the galaxy held its breath, once more waiting for the next echo of humanity, waiting for the next spark that would set the universe aflame. The galaxy did not sleep for even a single night since the second human signal spread across the stars, for the words of humanity were not loud, yet they thundered in every mind, and the echo grew stronger each passing day. And though no war had begun, the councils of every world felt as if they were already losing, for fear itself was breaking their unity. In the hidden chambers of the High Council, the leaders sat in silence, each waiting for the other to speak. Yet none dared, for the weight of the human voice still lingered like fire in their hearts. One by one their eyes turned to the scholar who had first spoken the rhythm within the human, words of rhythm that sounded like the beating of machines. And the scholar whispered that the humans were more than builders, they were creators of power without end, and that such creation could never be defeated by force alone. Across the fleet, soldiers trained harder than ever, their commanders shouting until their throats bled. Yet courage did not rise. Instead, it fell deeper into shadows. For every soldier knew that the humans did not fight with voices or ships alone. They fought with time itself, and time was always on their side. For while the galaxy trembled, humanity built. While the galaxy hesitated, humanity moved. And while the galaxy feared, humanity created. In the colonies near the border, whispers spread like smoke, for traders spoke of new cities rising on human worlds, cities of light and steel that appeared as if they had been born overnight. They spoke of factories larger than mountains and of rivers of fire that poured into endless machines. They spoke of skies so crowded with ships that stars themselves seemed hidden, and all who heard these tales knew they were no longer listening to rumors, they were listening to warnings. Among the rulers of the great empires, a secret fear began to take root. They realized that even if humanity sent no armies, their production alone was a weapon. For every day they delayed meant 10,000 new machines built. Every week they argued about strikes and sabotage. But each plan collapsed under the weight of dread, For even if one world was destroyed, there would be 10 more behind it. Even if one fleet was shattered, there would be countless more rising from the factories, and this truth burned their hearts like fire. On a forgotten moon at the edge of council space, a group of spies gathered with reports that chilled the blood of even the bravest. They had entered deep into human territory, and what they saw was unlike anything they had imagined. They saw lines of workers stretching as far as the eye could see. They saw machines that repaired other machines without pause. They saw power plants glowing brighter than suns, and they saw children learning not war, but creation building with their own hands, as if it were the first language of their people. The spies fled in terror, for they realized that the humans were not preparing for war. They were preparing for eternity. The council met once more in chambers darker than night, their voices sharp, their words heavy. With fear, some demanded a strike. Before it was too late, others warned that such a strike would only awaken a storm greater than the galaxy could endure, and the arguments turned to shouts, and shouts turned to silence, for all of them knew the truth. Though none dared speak it aloud, humanity was already beyond their reach. Across the stars common, people listened to human signals, and instead of fear, some felt awe. They began to admire the humans, to speak of them as the future, and this frightened the rulers even more, for if their own people began to hope in humanity, then the empires would fall from within, not from war, but from belief itself. And in the deep silence of the void, the humans sent yet another signal. It was not long, it was not complex, but it cut into the hearts of all who listened. It said that humanity would not stop building, because creation was their life, and they would continue whether the galaxy stood with them or against them. The words were calm, yet sharper than blades, and their weight fell upon every leader like chains of iron. The admirals of the great fleets gathered in hidden war rooms and stared at the maps of stars, their eyes moving from one human colony to another. Yet with each mark, they drew the maps only filled with more human worlds, more human ships, more human factories, until the admirals pushed away the charts in despair, for there was no strategy that could stop what was already endless. The galaxy began to understand a terrible truth. They were not facing an empire. They were facing a force of nature. They were facing a race that turned fear into fuel and silence into strength, a race that built faster than destruction, a race that created faster than death could claim them, and such a race could never be broken. And so the rulers of the galaxy faced their darkest question. If humanity could not be destroyed, should they be feared? Or should they be followed? Some whisper of alliances, others whisper surrender. But most remained silent, their thoughts heavy, their eyes dark with dread. In the hidden depths of human space, the factories glowed brighter, the cities rose higher, the ships grew larger, and the people worked together with unity that shook the stars. They did not speak of fear. They did not speak of enemies. They only spoke of building tomorrow, and in that simple truth lay their greatest weapon. As the night spread across the galaxy, every leader, every soldier, every common soul looked to the stars with the same thought: what will the humans do next? And in that silence, the fear grew stronger than any fleet and sharper than any blade. And so part 4 of the story of humanity was written not with battles, not with blood, but with silence and fear. For the galaxy now knew that the humans did not need to strike to win. Their greatest weapon was time, and time belonged only to them. The galaxy trembled in silence. The third human signal had come, and it carried no threat, no demand, no plea, yet its weight was greater than any fleet, for it carried a message that every ruler feared and every soldier dreaded, and every common being could not forget. It was a voice steady, calm, yet filled with power. It said that humanity would build forever, and no force could stop the march of their creation. And in those words the galaxy heard the sound of eternity. In the grand halls of the Empire, world's rulers sat in long silence, their hearts beating heavy, as if the human words had chained them in place. The High Lord of the Crimson Empire whispered that the humans had spoken like gods, not like mortals, and the thought of this made even the strongest rulers shiver, for gods cannot be fought and gods cannot be broken. And so the question grew in every mind: were the humans still mortals, or had they become something far beyond? In the training fields of the fleet, soldiers moved in formation, yet their steps lacked spirit, for every command fell hollow in the shadow of human power. Even the youngest recruits asked questions that had no answer. What use were ships when humans built more each day? What use were weapons when humans created stronger ones before dawn? What use was courage when the enemy was not fighting, but building? And the silence of commanders was answer enough. On distant colonies, voices spread to the markets like waves of fire. People whisper humans with not hatred. They spoke of their endless factories, their shining cities, their ships that rose like mountains, and their children who learned not to fear but to build. And in those whispers, seeds of hope grew. And the rulers of the galaxy feared this more than fleets for hope. is a fire that no ruler can extinguish. The scholars of 1,000 worlds met in secret to study the human words. They found rhythm, they found pattern, they found power. But they could not find weakness. One scholar cried that the humans were not using weapons of steel, they were using weapons of mind and spirit. And those weapons were greater than any cannon or beam, for they did not destroy worlds, they changed them, and such change was beyond control. In the dark chambers of the council, the debate turned fierce. Some cried that humanity must be struck down before it was too late. Others warned that war would bring only ruin. And still others spoke in whispers that perhaps humanity should be joined, not fought. But no agreement came, for fear and pride locked every heart. And so the council broke apart with no plan and no peace, only dread. Across the void, spies once more entered human lands, and what they saw this time drove terror deeper into their souls. They saw machines building machines without end. They saw cities rising like forests of steel. They saw ships leaving docks before the ink of design was even dry. They saw schools where children drew machines, not stories, where lessons were blueprints, not tales. And they fled with reports that chilled the galaxy, for they knew this truth humanity was not. Preparing for war, humanity was. Preparing for forever. The admirals of the greatest fleets gathered in war rooms, their maps covered in stars, their voices sharp. Yet each strategy ended the same way: defeat. Even if they struck the nearest colonies, more would rise. Even if they burned the largest factories, smaller ones would take their place. Even if they shattered fleets, new ships would be born before the ashes cooled. And so the admirals sat in silence, their pride broken, their courage fading. Yet in the shadows of this, fear of thought began to grow among some leaders. What if humanity could be turned into ally, not enemy? Where their endless power could be shared and not opposed. Yet such thoughts were dangerous. To speak them aloud was to invite death, for many rulers would call it betrayal. Still whispers spread, for even the most stubborn leaders knew the truth. They could not stop humanity, only choose how they would face them, with blade or with open hand. The galaxy shook again when a fourth human signal came, this one brighter than the rest, its voice filled with calm. Yet behind the calm lay thunder. It said that humanity had seen the stars and found them empty, and they would fill them with life, with machines, with cities, with creation unending. They would not conquer, they would not destroy, they would only build. Yet the weight of those words struck harder than war, for to build without end was to conquer without blood, to rule without chains. Fear spread like fire across the empire. Soldiers whispered surrender. Before war had even begun, citizens dreamed of human cities more than their own, and rulers stared into darkness, knowing their thrones were cracking under weight of human voice. The galaxy that had once feared weapons now feared words. A galaxy that once feared armies now feared factories. A galaxy that once ruled in pride now trembled in silence. And in the quiet corners of space, where few dare to travel, human ships continued to rise, shining with new steel, burning with new power, moving with endless purpose. For humanity did not speak of fear, they spoke of tomorrow. They spoke of creation, and in their unity lay a strength no enemy could match. The rulers of the galaxy asked themselves the same question again and again: how can we stop them? And the silence after the question was answer enough, for none could stop them, none could slow them, none could even understand them. And so the galaxy drifted into a night of dread, waiting for what humanity would do next. Yet the humans gave no hint, no warning. They only built, and the silence between their signals grew heavier than war itself, until rulers could not sleep, soldiers could not rest, and common people could not stop dreaming of human strength. At last, in the chambers of the High Council, the oldest of the leaders spoke, his voice shaking yet clear. He said that the humans were not enemy nor ally. They were destiny itself, and to fight destiny was to destroy oneself. And though many shouted against him, none could deny the weight of his words, for deep in their hearts they knew it was true. Humanity was not marching to war, they were marching to forever. And so Part 5 closed with silence heavier than steel, with fear sharper than blade, with hope brighter than sun. For the galaxy now stood at the edge of choice: surrender or alliance, war or unity, fear or hope. And no ruler, no soldier, no common soul could see what tomorrow would bring. The galaxy woke in fear, for the fifth human signal had not yet faded from memory, and already the stars fell heavy, as if something greater was coming. Rulers could not sleep, soldiers whispered in barracks, citizens looked to the skies with both awe and terror, because every word from humanity carried weight like thunder, and though they spoke not of war, their silence was more dreadful than any invasion. In the fortress world of the Crimson Empire, the High Lord gathered his council. The strongest generals stood with hollow eyes. The wisest scholars shook with dread. The lords of trade spoke of markets falling and fear rising. The High Lord struck his staff against the floor and demanded answers, but none could answer. How does one fight an enemy who does not fight How does one defeat a force that only builds yet grows stronger every moment? And the silence that followed was heavier than any response. Far away in the shining cities of the Merchant Alliance, leaders huddled in secret rooms, their voices sharp, their hands shaking for their profits. Had crumbled trade routes once busy now stood empty, because all buyers whispered of human goods. Faster, stronger, cheaper ships, machines, and tools that came from human hands outshined everything else. Merchants knew that no market could resist humanity, not through weapons, but through creation, and so their greed turned to fear. On the border colonies of the war clans, warriors sharpened blades and tested cannons, but their hearts were uncertain. Even the youngest among them asked, what use was courage against a people who needed none? What use was war when the other side built 10 times more? In a single day, the elders of the clan stood in silence, their pride cracked, their fire dimmed, because even they could not deny that war would mean nothing but defeat. In the shadow halls of the Galactic Council, leaders met once more, their words sharper than ever. One ruler cried that the humans must be stopped, another shouted that alliance was the only path, and still others screamed that waiting was suicide. Yet no voice carried strength, for all were drowned by the memory of human signals, for each word still echoed through their minds, and none could silence it. Spies returned again from human lands, their reports more troubling than ever. They had seen towers rising where none stood. Before, they had seen rivers of machines flowing from endless factories. They had seen schools where children spoke of stars not as dreams, but as maps of tomorrow, and in their eyes burned not fear, but faith. Spies confessed that even among humans there was no hesitation, no division, no weakness, and they carried back a truth that crushed the galaxy humanity was not planning for. The future humanity was already living in it. On one moon far from human reach, a gathering of scholars argued long into night. They studied human words, they studied human signals, they studied human silence. One voice cried that the humans had mastered not only machines, but time itself. They built as if centuries passed in days. Another argued that humans had turned unity into weapon, for no empire, no clan, no alliance could match their single voice, their single will, and their single dream. And so the scholars concluded that humanity was a storm, not a destruction, but a creation. In the fleets of the greatest empires, admirals studied maps until their eyes burned. They plotted every strike, every counter, every trap. Yet each plan fell apart, for the humans were not where they should be. Ships moved faster, factories appeared in places unmarked, cities grew in silence. Like forests in the dark, the admirals slammed fists against tables, but deep in their hearts they knew that strategy was dust against the wind of human progress. Among the common people, 1,000 worlds' dreams spread like wildfire. Children spoke of humans as heroes, not monsters. Artists painted human ships as symbols of light. Traders whispered that one day they too would walk in human markets, and builders prayed that they might learn the craft of endless creation. Rulers saw this hope and feared more than war, for hope cannot be chained, and faith cannot be silenced, and the people now dreamed not of their empires, but of humanity. The sixth human signal came without warning. It was not loud, it was not violent. It was soft and steady, yet it cut deeper than blade. The voice said that humanity did not seek to rule, did not seek to conquer, did not seek to burn. They sought only to build, to expand, to fill the silence of space with light and life and creation. And yet the weight of these words crushed the galaxy more than any threat, because to fill the stars was to claim them forever. Rulers sat frozen, soldiers looked to their captains with hollow eyes. Citizens trembled, for they understood at last humanity would never stop. They would not tire, they would not fall, they would not vanish, they would only build. And in time the stars would belong to them, without war, without conquest, without chains, simply by existing. And this was a truth that none could bear. The galaxy shook not from weapons, but from choice. For now every empire, every clan, every alliance stood at the edge of a question: should they resist and fall, or join and survive? And no answer came, only fear. In the chambers of the Galactic Council, the debate grew to rage. One lord screamed that alliance would mean surrender. Another shouted that war would mean death. Yet above them all, one voice broke through the storm. It was the elder of the silent worlds. He rose with frail hands, yet his voice carried like thunder. He said that the humans were not enemy nor ally. They were the tide of time itself. And to fight time is to be broken. To join time is to live and know. Many spat at his words, none could deny them, for in their hearts they knew it was true. But even as the council drowned in debate, another whisper spread from the edge of the galaxy, a rumor of a seventh signal greater than all. Before a voice, not yet heard, a voice that would shake the stars themselves. And as this rumor spread, fear turned to terror, hope turned to fire, and the galaxy held its breath, for all knew that when the seventh signal came, nothing would remain the same. And so Part 6 closed in silence, a silence heavier than steel, deeper than night, sharper than blade for the galaxy, now waited in dread and hope for the human voice that would echo across eternity. The galaxy trembled with whispers, for rumor of the seventh human signal spread faster than fire across dry fields. Leaders who once pretended to be calm now stared into the void with hollow eyes. Warriors who once shouted their pride now sharpened their blades with trembling hands. Scholars who once claimed to know truth now wrote in silence, for all believed that the seventh human voice would decide the fate of the stars. In the great council halls of the Crimson Empire, the High Lord refused to eat, refused to sleep. His throne felt heavy, his crown fell hollow. He had built fleets larger than any in history, but he knew that against humanity, they were nothing more than drifting shadows. His generals spoke of courage, his ministers spoke of loyalty, but the High Lord could see in their eyes that none of them believed their own words. Across the shining towers of the Merchant Alliance, wealthiest rulers met in secret chambers filled with gold and jewels, yet their hands shook, for they could not buy safety nor bribe silence. Human trade had crushed them, human craft had outmatched them, their profits were now ashes. And they understood at last that wealth without power meant nothing. Their empire had been built on numbers, but humanity had shown that numbers could be endless. The war clans burned their forges with fury, great cannons were built, mighty blades sharpened. But even the strongest warrior looked at the stars with unease. The elders reminded them of ancient victories against great foes, yet no tale matched this. The humans fought no wars, they spilled no blood. They conquered without fire, they conquered by never stopping. And even the proudest warrior knew that no blade could cut what was infinite. In the hidden temples of silent worlds, monks gathered in circles, whispering prayers. They said the humans were not conquerors, but carriers of destiny. Some claimed that humanity was chosen to carry light into darkness. Others claimed they were cursed to walk until the stars burned out. But all agreed that the seventh signal would not simply be a voice, it would be a truth too heavy to ignore. Spies returned again from human worlds, their words more dangerous than blades. They said humans no longer spoke of reaching the stars, they spoke of crossing them. They said humans built ships not just for travel, but for permanence, great vessels that could live forever among the stars. They said children laughed while learning the maps of galaxies. As if they were learning the streets of their towns, spies confessed that humanity no longer dreamed they had made. The dream real and the stars were. Already theirs in spirit. Admirals across the galaxy grew restless. They tried to repair fleets, they tried to draw maps, they tried to ready traps, but none of their plans fit, because humans no longer moved as empires, humans moved as time itself, and no strategy could defeat time. Ships launched faster, factories doubled. Every season entire colonies appeared in places spies had sworn were empty a month ago, and even the most brilliant commander knew that this was a war, already lost before it began. Among the people of 1,000 worlds, a quiet change spread. No longer did they look to their rulers for guidance. No longer did they look to their armies for safety now. They looked to the humans with hope. Children said they would grow to see human cities. Parents prayed that their children might walk among human stars, builders, artists, healers. And traders whispered that they wished not to fight, but to follow, and this frightened rulers more than any weapon, because loyalty cannot be commanded when faith is already given elsewhere. At last the seventh human signal came and arrived, not with fire, not with thunder, but with silence that carried weight beyond measure. And then a voice, clear, calm, steady, spoke across the galaxy. It said that humanity did not seek thrones. Humanity did not seek change. Humanity sought only to endure, to grow, to build. It said that the stars belonged not to the strongest, not to the oldest, not to the richest, but to those who would never stop moving forward, and humanity would never stop. The words echoed in every chamber, every ship, every home. Rulers sank into their thrones, warriors lowered their blades, scholars dropped their pens, and citizens held their breath, for the voice was not loud, yet it felt eternal. It was not violent, yet it broke empires. It was not a command, yet it demanded obedience, because it was not merely a voice, it was the sound of a truth no one could escape. The High Lord of the Crimson Empire screamed in fury. His armies bowed in silence. The merchant rulers wept in chambers filled with treasures that now meant nothing. The war clans beat their chests in denial, but their voices carried no fire. The monks of the silent worlds smiled through tears, for they had seen this fate long ago, and the people across the galaxy whispered that the stars already belonged to the humans. But the human signal did not end with words. It ended with a promise. The voice said that humanity would not stop with this galaxy. It said that one day their voices would echo in every galaxy, every cluster, every star, and that when the universe itself grew silent, humanity would still remain building, creating, moving forward. And though the words carried no threat, every ruler, every warrior, every scholar felt the same fear that this was not a boast, but a truth already carved into time itself. The galaxy fell silent after the seven signal leaders refused to speak, soldiers refused to march, citizens refused to sleep, because all of them knew that no matter what choice they made, no matter what way they fought, no matter what deals they signed to tie to humanity, could not be stopped. They were no longer an empire, no longer a people. They were eternity itself walking through the stars. And so the galaxy waited not for war, not for peace, but for the day when a human tide would reach their worlds, for all knew now that it was not a question of if, but when, and as the seventh signal faded into silence, the universe itself seemed to lean forward, listening for the next voice, the next echo, the next step of a people who would never stop. The stars burned bright and endless, and in their light the galaxy understood a truth too heavy to deny, that the future belonged not to them, not to their empires, not to their armies, but to humanity. And as the silence stretched across eternity, every ruler, every soldier, every child, every dreamer felt the same shiver the humans had spoken, and the universe would never again know sleep.